Oh, hi, boys. Hi. Good morning, homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. Welcome back if you're not new here. I'm just going to do a quick video of the state of the garden. My garlic is starting to come up. My husband and I have been sick for the last 5 or 6 days with what I think is the flu. And I don't have any additional footage shot of cooking. So thought we'd just show you this glorious late February day. And spring is coming. And this is one of the most sunny days, blue sky days we've had in probably 3 months. And we're finally both feeling well enough to be vertical and take the dogs out for a walk. Although we're both still a little shaky. And so, yeah, welcome early spring. You can hear juncos singing. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful morning. All right, boys, let's go. Go, boy. Go, go, go. Go on, let's go. Let's go. Come on. Go get him, Charlie. This big tree is a silver maple, and I'm always amazed. Hopefully you guys can catch this against the blue sky. This is the very first thing, other than daffodils starting to poke their heads out of the ground, to show signs of life in the spring. And it's not blooming yet.
It's coming soon.
But this thing, when it blooms, it's subtle. Oh yeah, I think actually some of that is blooming. Once this really gets going, it is absolutely covered with bees. You can actually tap these trees and make maple syrup out of them. And I've done it once here. But the problem is our climate is not terribly conducive to sap because you need to have days that are above freezing and nights that are below freezing. And for here, that's January. And January here is gray and miserable. And I always am just trying to get through it, and it just never occurs to me to go out and tap the trees. And then just about the end of January, we'll get like one partially sunny day, and I'll suddenly think to myself, oh, I should have tapped those trees. By the time we get to February, our day and night temperatures are inconsistent enough that it doesn't really work. So yeah, once again, I have not tapped these trees. But yeah, they're not the most glorious ornamental tree in the world, but they are definitely a beautiful welcome sign of spring. My husband is feeding the chickens. We have managed to, thankfully, he got sick a couple of days after I did. He took good care of me. And then I was just starting to finally rally when he went down. And so we've managed to stay up on farm chores. Just barely, but we were able to do it. As you can see in this bed, there's a bunch of bulbs in here. This is a pecan tree, and around this I have planted all kinds of spring bulbs that are just starting to emerge, which is also a lovely sign of spring. I feel like we're a little bit behind. Usually I have daffodils blooming by my birthday. But we've still got 3 weeks to go, so we're probably gonna make it. Oh my goodness, buddy, are you ready to go? Go, go, go. All right, we're gonna go for a walk, and when I come back, I'll show you guys the garlic bed. So we're out here in the raised bed garden area. It is the 22nd, maybe, of February. I've really lost track. I barely know what day it is right now. And you can see I've done absolutely no garden cleanup. And I do that on purpose. There's a lot of habitat available with old plants, old stems and mulch layers and that kind of thing. And so I never clean up my garden until the spring. Although admittedly, some of that motivation is also simply because our winters here are terrible and overcast and foggy and miserable. And the last thing I want to do is be outside working in that. And so some of it is that as well. But we're getting close to the time when I would start cleaning this stuff up. This is my green stalk. And a lot of people will ask like what they should do with their green stalk, especially when it's planted with a perennial like a strawberry over the winter. And I take mine completely apart and put everything close to the ground. Anything that's closer to the ground is going to be less prone to extreme temperature fluctuations because that soil and that ground temperature, the natural temperature of the earth, is going to mitigate some of the extreme fluctuations. And then, of course, if you get snow cover, that's going to provide an insulating blanket versus if it's still in a big tower, basically all of those roots in those pots are going to be exposed to a lot of cold air. And so I like to take mine apart. Mine did have mostly strawberries planted in them. And then unfortunately, I did not cover these for quite a while this fall after I took this apart and my chickens got in here. And so they managed to scratch out completely that one on the far side and a big chunk of this one. Thankfully, I also have a flat of strawberries that I pulled out of these to overwinter and to hopefully root. And so I've got replacements to go in here, but right now I've got chicken wire over the whole thing to keep the dang chickens out of here. I had put some worm compost in here that had seeds in it that hadn't composted because the worms hadn't eaten the seeds. And I'm sure that's what they were going for. They thought that was just delicious. But I just uncovered this. I had a tarp over the whole thing to add another layer of protection because we went through some really, really cold. This winter we got down to -12, which is really cold for here. And so put a tarp over everything before that happened. And so I just pulled that off 3 or 4 days ago. And so everything was still alive, but a little bit light starved. And so we're just now starting to perk up, get some green. These look really good. And some of these can be thinned. I'm seeing like 1 plant, 2 plant, 3 plant. So we've got multiple plants there that we can spread out as well and thin these out for another round. But yeah, strawberries in the green stalk. I'm hoping for good things this year. It turned out I learned last year that I need to fence my green stalk because my dachshund was eating all of the ripe strawberries before I could get to them. Little stink. And then the big news is this bed. This was carrots and herbs and beets, mostly carrots and beets, and a few other things last year. And when I took the carrots out, you can see there's still some remnants here of the carrot tops that I just threw back in the bed to compost. I planted this with garlic. And normally in the past, I have planted 100-foot double rows and then 3 of those, so 600 linear feet of garlic every year because I use it a lot in my business and I've sold it a lot. And I'm scaling way back this year. And so this year, I just planted my garlic in late October in this raised bed. This has also got chicken wire over it because the chickens were getting in here and digging up the garlic as well. But the garlic is coming up. And so each one of these rows is a different variety of garlic, or at least each section. And I think I have maybe 5, possibly 6 different kinds of garlic in here. And you can see they're sprouting and doing well. And I've got lots of extra leaves. And so now that things are starting to get going, in a week or 2, I will come in here and mulch this pretty heavily to feed the soil and to protect it and keep the weeds down. But it looks like almost everything has come up. Some stuff, you know, a little slower or a little smaller. You can see these guys are just barely breaking the surface versus how big some of this other stuff is. I'm guessing this is a different variety right here. I have a note-taking app on my phone, and when I planted everything, I put the bags with the names of the garlic at the heads of each section wrote everything down in the notes, and then took a photo of the whole bed so that I could keep track, because it's very, very easy to forget. And usually when I plant garlic, I try to alternate. If I have both soft neck and hard neck, I'll alternate varieties so that it's obvious where the variety changes simply by what is sending up a garlic scape in the spring. So, but that's pretty exciting. Garlic is coming along quite nicely. And a few other things. This bed has just been heavily mulched with some leaves just to protect it over the winter. This was beans, so the bean plants are mulching down there underneath. This was flowers. This had a bunch of different things in it, but this one is a perennial, or at least a biannual salvia that I got from Baker Creek. And I don't think they mentioned in the description that it was a biannual, or they just said perennial. And I got 0 flowers off of this last year, but it looks like it survived the cold, which is fantastic, especially because it was in a pot. And I'm hoping that this is actually going to bloom this year. I have 2 or 3 of these planted around, and I never got to see the actual bloom, which is why I picked the flower, because I thought it was gorgeous, because they simply didn't bloom the first year. And so, yeah, it would have been nice to have known that ahead of time. And then I forget what this is. I'll put the name on the screen. This one also is maybe survived, and hopefully we'll get more flowers on it than it had last year. It did bloom last year, but it wasn't very dramatic. It was mostly, it was getting shaded out by everything else that was in here. Yeah, and that's kind of it. I'm not sure why, when my husband mulched, he decided to mulch that half and not this half. This was celery, some of which I still have in my fridge. So the celery lasted an incredibly long time, and then everything else that was in here was herbs. This was all squash, okra, and then some hollyhocks. And the hollyhocks were another thing that I have these all over my property, and none of them bloomed last year. There was one that almost made it. It bloomed. It tried to bloom in the fall, and then it got hit by a frost before it had a chance to actually bloom. But there's a few of those in here that have clearly survived the winter. And so I'll either dig these up and relocate them, or I will let them bloom in here this year. So that's exciting. I'm really excited to see those. Some of those are black hollyhocks. This was all of the peppers. And again, we just like pulled them out, laid them down, mulched everything, and kind of letting the worms have a field day in here. This is asparagus on the end. I have asparagus in 5 or 6 places out here. And one of the first things I do this spring will be to trim this down, because that'll be an early spring treat. But again, I like to leave all of this habitat for insects and birds over the winter time. And asparagus especially, it has, if it's male and female, it has berries. The female plants have berries on them, and so it's nice to leave that for the birds as food. This area is normally overgrown with perennials. There is a big horseradish out here. There's a rhubarb plant that I need to transplant that's been struggling over here for quite a while. This little tree is an apple tree called a pearmain. We happen to live on pearmain, and so I wanted to have an apple tree that was actually named after where we live. And pearmains are an old variety. And then there's a lot of wild comfrey in here. That comfrey is a cut and drop because it brings up deep minerals from the soil, and so I've just been using it as a mulch. And so you can see how it just naturally mulches the soil at the end of the season, which is nice when it all dies back. And then clearly I've done nothing to clean off the insane bean trellis from last year. So that's going to be a big project, getting all of that off of there as well. You can see I've just thrown piles of stakes and things onto the ground out here, but we have old friends emerging. This is catnip, which is perennial, makes a great tea, is absolutely beloved by all kinds of pollinators, and so I just kind of let it do its thing. It was here when we bought the property, and we've never bothered to try to eradicate it, and so it comes up very easily. It's very shallow rooted. And so we just pull it when it's in the wrong spot and leave it when it's not. But this guy is already starting to show some signs of life here in late February, which is exciting. It's always fun to see those garden friends. This plant is called purple dead nettle. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. And it is edible, medicinal, and quite pretty. And it is in the mint family. It also grows by runners as well as reseeding. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but basically this is a four-sided stem. All mints have four sides on their stem, and you can feel it when you roll it in your fingers. And so that's a dead giveaway that it's in the mint family, even if you don't know what it is. This is where my red wiggler worms live in the summertime. They are in my garage right now, protected from the worst of the cold. Thanks for joining me out in the sunshine, you guys. And I'll have a new Cooking the Harvest video out for you very soon.